Ja, herzlich willkommen zum Teil 2 unserer kleinen Serie. Erstmal herzlich willkommen natürlich zum Thema Experience SAP Podcast der Sovanta AG. Letztes Mal haben wir gesprochen zum Thema Customer Experience, dieses Mal zum Thema Employee Experience. Ich habe wieder Dr. Andrew White zu Gast. Hat beim letzten Mal schon sehr viel Spaß gemacht. Ich glaube, dieses Mal wird es nicht anders werden. Dieses Mal eben das Thema Mitarbeiter, Engagement, Mitarbeiterzufriedenheit, die Messung von Mitarbeiterzufriedenheit mal gemeinsam zu diskutieren. Da gibt es einiges, einige spannende Ansatzpunkte, einige spannende Themen, viele spannende Use Cases, auch noch ein bisschen Ausblick und ja, ich freue mich drauf. Hier übrigens, wie beim letzten Mal gilt, ausnahmsweise der Podcast wieder auf Englisch. Wir haben mit Andrew gesprochen, auch nach der wirklich erfolgreichen CX-Folge wollte nicht auf Deutsch wechseln, aber ich glaube, macht Spaß, ihm auf Englisch zuzuhören, von daher auch heute wieder ausnahmsweise auf Englisch. Thanks Andrew for joining me again today. For the second part, the second episode on XM use cases. So last time we talked heavily about CX use cases. What do we see at customers? What are certain clusters around CX use cases? Also, where is this whole area heading to? Today, second topic, a similar topic, now from the EX side. So again, obviously experience management, but now the whole area of employee experience management. Also pretty interesting field of ours, also where we have a lot of customer projects ongoing. I would like to use the next minutes to really dive a little bit deeper into what are companies doing, what are the use cases, why do they do those use cases, and those kind of questions.
Sounds
I'm
good,
really happy that you joined me today.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Again today, sorry. So if last time I started with the NPS, with the CSAT. So what comes into my mind at first when I think about CX? With EX, I don't know. It's always these moments that matter. I don't know if this was the SAP and Qualtrics messaging all of the time, but if I think about EX, I always see this journey and the different moments that matter, and having this as a picture for me for employee experience management, but that's not really specific. So I would like to use today, first of all, to identify maybe, what moments that matter do you see that could act really good as a starting point, and what other areas of employee experience management are relevant besides those moments that matter. But maybe we start with that one, as I started already. Moments that matter along the employee journey. What is a good starting point? If I was a customer, what would you recommend me? Which moment that matter and along my employees' journey should we tackle in getting the feedback on that one?
Yeah, good question. Okay, there are many moments that matter for employees, and in terms of a starting point, usually with customers we have the choice, right? So we're going to talk about the engagement survey, the yearly engagement survey, in which case we can explore a number of topics, in some depth. Or are we going to focus here on something that's more specific? So be that, an onboarding experience, post-training, post-return to work, like after parental leave, or an exit survey, for example. That really, it depends. I guess what do you say in German? Wo der Schuh drückt.
Wo der Schuh drückt, exactly.
Yeah. This is, every organization is sort of in a, I think, idiosyncratic sort of a situation in that, that they're just because of the industry, they may be finding themselves in a period of growth, or where there's, they're having challenges retaining employees. So I think that's something I would explore. I don't think I'd say, we should start with a training experience or focus on an exit survey. I think that's to be explored, yeah. But what we typically find is that we have three major sorts of projects. There's the sort of engagement, the larger surveys. We have these pulse surveys where a particular topic gets gets explored in some depth. So something like employee well-being or safety. And then there are these more candidate sort of experience or employee experience moments like you described, where you can have more like a specific trigger. So someone's, undertaken training, and then we send a survey, and that's also certainly got its value as well, especially in that case, given the amount of money that's spent on training within organizations. It's good to follow up and ask.
Yeah, not being too much into the HR side myself, I would my gut feeling was a little bit that, okay, those experience-based kind of surveys seem to be a little bit more modern compared to an engagement one, where I say, okay, I like the idea of having, okay, I have a certain trigger, I come back from parental leave and I get asked there specifically to that topic, or I was on a training, I got asked for feedback, compared to a big engagement one where I say, okay, this is like 1/10 of the overall survey. Is this like a right impression? To have to say, okay, this is more modern compared to this one, or is it just different use cases and scenarios where I say, okay, it's okay to have both, but you just need to know when to use which survey type?
I think it is more modern, and I think that's a result of the technology being where it is right now. So engagement surveys have been around for a very long time. I remember helping government departments in Australia undertake engagement surveys then, and that was with pencil and paper, and that's a totally different situation to what we find ourselves in now with platforms like Qualtrics. But yeah, these candidate experience or employee experience trigger-based surveys then are, I think that they are made possible by by integrations between systems. So we'd recognise that someone has done the training, and we're not handing up bits of paper after the training sessions, but rather we're triggering these surveys by integrations, and they can get conveniently filled out, and
So technology made it actually possible. So it was just unthinkable before that you do this kind of service, because you cannot send out manually to everybody who was taking a training. Now this training specific to that training, but now if you have the integration between SuccessFactors and Qualtrics, you just actually know, and then the tool can do the rest for you. So
that's my sense. Yeah. So I think it's markedly easier to do now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this means that there's no more engagement service out there, or do you see that, okay, there's also good reasons for companies to have engagement surveys also done via Qualtrics?
Certainly there's a good reason for engagement surveys, because it's worthwhile having employees sit down and in one sitting answer a range of questions about their experience at the organisation. There are numerous focus topics that you would want to do that for. So this, there are leadership topics. How effective are the leaders within the organisation? How effective are is your direct manager? So company loyalty. You've the well-being and safety. In one sitting, you can get an impression about where the entire workforce is at. In contrast with the moment or the event triggered surveys, then this is really just the people that are passing through them. And I think the nature of the questions here is at a slightly different level. So we're talking here about someone's experience working for an organisation, their degree of engagement, those sorts of topics.
So you have two things. So one is really, there's questions you wouldn't tackle in those moments that matter, because there's not one of those triggers that actually asks for how's your management doing, and there's another one that you say, okay, you don't get feedback from everybody, because there might be groups in the organization that just not went through a moment that matters, so you get no feedback at all from them. So you need this occasional engagement survey to make sure that you get a holistic picture of what people think in the organization.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, taking a step back here, I think an engagement survey is really an opportunity to understand what it is what are the factors that are driving someone's engagement at work. If we think about what makes employees, want to recommend the company as a good place to work, that they have a high degree of loyalty, and they're generally satisfied at work. Their experience at work. What's contributing to that? And in order to get to have a satisfactory answer to the question, you need to have another set of questions that ask, how are we communicating as a company? What are our leaders like? And think about like those areas there. So, and they're manifold. There's numerous potential drivers that you would want to explore.
Do you see customers that actually combine the two surveys? So is it either you're the engagement fan or you're the pulse fan, or is it out of the reasons we just discussed also companies that say, okay, no, let's really combine both?
I've seen pulse-like engagement surveys being delivered where instead of having, say, 6 or 7 potential drivers of engagement that are being explored within an engagement survey that would, could take 30 to 40 minutes to fill out. Some organisations decide to just focus on 2 or 3 and have a 10 to 15 minute survey then that I guess in the classic sense wouldn't be an engagement survey, but it's a bit more like a pulse survey, especially if they decide, hey, we want to regularly administer the survey, perhaps not on a yearly basis, but it could even be on a quarterly basis. So
they just decide for a smaller engagement, or do they kind of split up the overall engagement into like 6 or 7 pulse-like engagements?
I think it's just a shorter version of the engagement, and when it's shorter, then they ask themselves, well, can we maybe think about administering this again? And this is largely driven by like what it is they're planning to do. So the survey is like it's a measurement tool, right? So if they're planning on implementing change in a specific area, maybe they've got a new communication strategy that they're wanting to implement, and sending all the middle managers to training around communicating company values, then it's probably a good idea to ask that fairly soon after, like give it a couple of months, and then we can ask whether there's been whether they've what their impressions are then, so that you've got maybe a time point 1 and a second time point, and you can see whether things are moving in the right direction. Okay, so there are also those pulse surveys really related to kind of also internal projects, so stuff you've changed, change management processes, so that you actually get the feedback on that one as well. That's what I see as a big trend. Yeah, this is what these pulses are largely designed to pick up on. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was just wondering, when I had to think a little bit about that, but when you said, okay, there's the trend also to have smaller kind of engagements, like pulse ones, is this also helping to get a little bit more objective feedback? Because I could assume, not really being into the topic too much, but I could assume having this yearly engagement, and you ask questions through all different areas, that there's certain scenarios you ask you ask a question on training, but you haven't had a training for a year. So how could you answer in a good way? So having this on a more regular basis, and then a shorter one, gives you maybe more objective feedback of your employees. Is this a thing, or is this just okay? Not really. Is my sense. I would go along with that. I think with any longer engagement survey, there's always a percentage of responses, for example, that are perhaps where the quality is not quite where you'd like it to be. Mm-hmm. So just by the very nature that people are getting tired of answering questions, and usually there are clusters of questions, so some respondents might feel like they're answering the same question twice, and then there are these usual. The psychologists sort of have special names for all these sorts of effects, but where people tend to circle the same number every time. I think that there is some merit in keeping things short, and I think we notice that in the response quality as well. Yeah. And because of that, then I think that it's a good opportunity then to actually make use of this as well. There's always effort associated with administering employee surveys, but I think as more and more of the workforce have email addresses and are working online or have access to I guess tools that make it easy to provide their experiences, then that's a good thing. So here I'm thinking about. Once everyone's got an email address, then it's usually as part of these employee experience surveys. Like there's we want to make sure that that employees are providing responses to the questions, but we've also got some demographic meta information that we're collecting about them that's known, that's coming out of success factors, for example. And so by enabling, say, SSO authentication, then what that means is that people can just use their usual credentials, log on, complete the survey. We've got all that additional information, and I mean, it's only taken them 10 to 15 minutes, and we actually gain quite a lot from it then, and the organisations gain a lot from that as well. So they get all the context as well, and they can see where someone's, where they were and where things are moving.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this technology, but I could picture that there's some people not really liking that, because I could assume that, okay, I see that you get a lot of meta information you need for actually analyzing the survey result, but is there questions about privacy then? Because if I log in via my SSO, I could imagine, okay, is it still that anonymous? Like if they have all my credentials, they have everything, they could kind of find out where who I am and really judge my feedback.
Yes, certainly. These are very important conversations that we have in every employee experience project, and it's important that we have them early, because sometimes there's some some complexities, and every organisation is different. This needs to pass through works councils and whatnot, and then if it's a multinational, then there are various works councils that need to be approached. And I think here I have to say, like the support we get from Qualtrics is exceptional. So when there are very, very complex, detailed questions, then they've usually got the answer, and legal and technical teams that can help us out there. And then, but in terms of the system itself and where information is and who's got the permission to see what and what user accounts are set up, there's a whole host of conversations that intersect here where we support clients here, so to make sure that that they've got the assurance that the data that's being collected is only being seen by the people that need to see it. So in many cases, organisations, in some cases, organisations take a step back and say, we don't want to see anything. In which case, like we as the partner, then have got that responsibility to set up the platform, and then we would be the sort of have the top level permissions that would allow us to then drill down to the individual response if we wanted to. But really, this is
okay. So it's also like we do that really as a managed service for them. So we could convince them that the platform itself has all privacy built in that you need in order to make sure that you can also convince works council. But if they're still a bit hesitant, we can also tell them, okay, we do everything for you, so none of your employees has access to the raw data and can do any bad things with the data.
Yeah, that's quite common.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, we talked about that. And you know me. I always try to figure out, okay, what is the best approach now to my program? I would be an EX guy, and I try to figure out, okay, how could I tackle my EX program? I understood. We have the engagement ones, pretty common. It makes perfect sense to bring them to Qualtrics, your traditional engagement ones, because you get a lot of additional features and a possibility to analyze the results and so on. You then have your more like pulse ones. You can also break down engagements into pulses, make sure it's more, maybe a little bit more on a regular basis. You can shorten time you need, so that maybe would be then the next step, or you can already combine those. And if you want to go then the next, is it like the next step to say, okay, it's again this moment that matter, and this responses and surveys to specific moments that matter. But you don't do that at the beginning because of the integration, because you need to have things set up. So you know in which direction I'm heading to. Is it something that you tackle like that, or you say, okay, there's also you could also start with the integration side directly if you have success factors, if you have then Qualtrics, because the additional effort is not that much, and if you want to, it's more like a use case. A question of what you actually need. So it shouldn't be limited by technology and by integration efforts, because if you actually need it, it makes sense to invest into this integration.
Yep. Some organizations will decide that they do need it, and then they're prepared to make that invest. And the invest may not be may be minimal because their HRIS landscape is already quite mature. I mean, I wouldn't recommend having a trigger-based survey if you're still in the middle of a success factors transformation. It's good if that's already set up and the information's clean, because it needs to be clean in order for this to run smoothly. So if that's the case, then and there's still a need to collect these impressions, which there usually is on a yearly basis, then the engagement is the or a small pulse engagement like pulse is the something that's usually a bit easier to get, because for that then you need a list of employees, the contextual information, like the meta information that's going to help you with the analysis, and that can be delivered in a flat file. It doesn't. It's not mission critical. That's delivered via an integration.
So it's kind of a safe way to start, where you say, okay, if you need to show success really fast, also there might be also some of those scenarios, then you could start with that one. You don't need the integration. There's no kind of additional risk to the project. It's fine. But at the same time, if you have yes, the Schuhdruck, like you said, at specific areas, then go with the integration and make sure that you actually tackle that problem. I think that brings me also a little bit to the last topic you mentioned, like the specific tools like candidate experience. I could imagine with candidate experience, it makes absolute sense to have those integrations, because otherwise it could be pretty painful to send out the surveys manually. But if you say, okay, I have a problem with candidate experience, then I can't start within, or shouldn't start with engagements or pulses. I really start with do the integration right and then implement this candidate experience tool.
That's right. And that said, there are transitionary sort of approaches that you could think about here as well. So for a leaving survey, for example, it is possible to upload participants if your HRIS system is not quite there yet to justify the integration. Then for a couple of months you can make that export, and then twice a month send out the emails to the employees that are leaving in order to capture some of those their experience. So it doesn't necessarily need to be ready there. When we start these projects, we usually these are some of the questions that we ask up front. Then
So I see there's not like if this then that kind of decision tree that would help me. It's more like, okay, we can make things happen, and we could also work around some obstacles at the beginning and make sure that we not like in the next release or the release after kind of fix that and do then the integration right. But you can start tackling what you actually want to tackle from a business perspective right away, and you shouldn't have the technical limitations.
Exactly, yeah, and that's important because organizations, they usually begin by putting together a set of goals, aspirations, then developing values that align with those aspirations. And they do this not just because they want to have some nice words on their website, but also they want to rally their employees so that there's a high degree of alignment and that the whole organization's on board for the journey. And if they sense that there are some areas where there's misalignment, then it's usually not a good idea to wait too long. This is the time to act. And so I think that the question about when to start is usually quite clear. And I think it shouldn't be driven by whether the integration's there or not. I think we always find a way to make it possible to collect the experiences, and then ultimately to act on them.
So it's really something that is driven by business needs, and then we'll find the solution for that.
Yep, a combination of business, ultimately business needs, and then these aspirations that get then put behind them.
Mm-hmm. So I had a similar question in our CX podcast, because now we were talking a lot about scenarios we see at the moment. With CX, we saw that there's also some trends. You talked about predictive experience management, predicting experiences, being it good or bad experience, maybe making sure that those bad experiences don't happen in the first place. Is it a similar trend in the EX space, or do you see other use cases, scenarios, direction the EX space is heading to at the moment?
I think it's yet to really come, but I think that what I hear a lot about and what I read as important is the interaction between EX and CX. Mm-hmm. But I get hints that leaders are aware of these connections, but I don't think that they're quite there in sort of in joining these two things together. But I think that they do go hand in hand. Like what your customers are asking you as an organization, or what they're asking of you as an organization, needs to align with what your employees, what your employees are telling you, and how they're performing, and how they're all working together. So this is all this is all moving in the same direction, and I think if prediction is I think prediction is a trend within the CX space, but I think that also means that it's going to be increasingly important on the EX side as well. So understanding, how an employee then how they're feeling at a particular point, what their experience is, but then also sort of predicting them what should be done with these, what should be done ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So someone's going on parental leave, and they maybe have that there's some issues like with the system, that's previous employees have told you that this is a bit clunky. Then be preemptive. Don't force them to go down the same path. Then you can make this easier by developing. It could be a temporary workaround. Mm-hmm. Or do you see where I'm going? Yeah.
It's interesting. Just like you said, at the end of the day, it's kind of converging into a similar direction where you say, maybe CX is a little ahead, but at the end of the day, EX and CX is not too different, and maybe trends that have been there in the CX space are then going over to the EX one. So maybe sometimes you can even learn by having a look into the CX space, where the EX one might be 6 months later. I don't know. And I also see this. Never really thought about that about the combination of EX and CX. That obviously those two are interrelated. I guess in both directions, being bad employee experience leading to bad customer experience, because at the end of the day, your employees serve the customer, and there needs to be a correlation. But I guess also the other way around, where you say bad customer experience is also not too satisfying long term for employees. So I see that there's lots of combination where this looking at the data together could make perfect sense. Exactly.
I mean, I immediately started thinking about complaint handling procedures. So like where really you've got support staff that are capturing or that are having to deal with complaints coming in from customers. They've got a set of tooling and things that they need to do in order to process the complaint then, and it's if they're having to jump through the same hoops time and time again, and they see the limitations with the complaint handling process, and they think that perhaps some things should be, in today's, in 2022, they should already be automated, or there should be some easy way to do something. But they see no sign that the organisation is changing. Mm-hmm. Then you see how that this could go. But there's an interplay between the two. They're probably not going to be delivering the best customer experience, and they're probably, as employees, not.
Yeah,
not happy.
We most of the time have happy customers, obviously, at Sovanta, but we all know that it's more fun to work together with a happy customer compared to a maybe not so satisfied one. So it's pretty obvious, I would say. But nevertheless, important to have those information at a joint dashboard and really having the data there to figure out, okay, where's the correlation and what could we change in order to improve then both sides.
I think every organisation is in that situation where they have to work on the things that are causing friction. Yeah, identifying those points in that employee journey that are associated with high degrees of pain and suffering. These are good places to start.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Another really interesting episode comes to an end. Personally, I've learned a lot about EX use cases, about how could we tackle things, especially that it's not like this. Like I said, if this, then this, and a decision tree one. But we will make the scenarios work, and we really need to listen to what the business need is, and then the Qualtrics platform together with us will find a way to actually suit it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm optimistic that things are. This is definitely an exciting time, and I think that the technology enables an awful lot. I don't think that that's a limiting factor anymore. I think this is really the time to take action for many leaders, and I enjoy working with organisations and with people that see things like this and that really want to push the needle on a lot of these issues. Yeah.
Perfect final statement, I would say. So looking forward to the upcoming projects. Like I said last time, I'm also looking forward to talking to you again on new use cases, new customer scenarios. So it was a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thanks a lot and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks a lot, Christian. You too.
Thank you. Das war's schon wieder. Teil 2 der Serie zu Ende. Wir haben letztes Mal über Customer Experience gesprochen, diesmal über Employee Experience gesprochen. Beide Podcasts haben mir persönlich extrem viel Spaß gemacht. Danke an der Stelle nochmal an Andrew fürs Teilnehmen. Ich glaube auch heute wieder sehr, sehr viele spannende Ansatzpunkte in was gibt es alles im Bereich Employee Experience Management, was sind die Unterschiede, was verleitet einen auch potenziell oder was beeinflusst eine Entscheidung, den einen oder den anderen Weg einzuschlagen, klassischeres Engagement zu machen, Pulse-Checks zu machen, Moments that matter sich anzugucken, zu überlegen, wo hat man konkrete Business-Probleme. Ich glaube, viele Sachen haben wir schön ausarbeiten können. Natürlich alles im Rahmen der Zeit, die uns hier zur Verfügung ist, können wir alles, denke ich, auch sehr schön nochmal im persönlichen Gesprächen vertiefen. Aber mir persönlich hat Spaß gemacht, viele Eindrücke wieder gewonnen und auch da wieder gesehen, die Reise geht weiter. Viele spannende neue Themen, nochmal ein schöner Impuls am Schluss in Richtung Verbindung von Customer Experience und Employee Experience, ein Bereich, der ja auch noch ganz am Anfang steht, aber wo, wenn man mal einen Tick tiefer drüber nachdenkt, einiges an Möglichkeiten daraus resultiert. Von daher hat Spaß gemacht und ich denke, wir werden Andrew nicht zum letzten Mal hier im Podcast gehört haben.